think we're starting to get a clear sense of where all this is going. It's not good news, but it's not surprising, and it leads well from some of our videos that we've done recently. Now, can we just recapitulate briefly as to where we are? Theresa May has once again broken all her promises. She said that we would leave on the 29th of March. We didn't leave on the 29th of March. She said that no deal was better than a bad deal. She's now said that there's no question of a no deal at all. She's ruling that out. She's also spoke in very harsh terms about Jeremy Corbyn. She's now talking to Jeremy Corbyn. And she also repeatedly ruled out a customs union. What she is now apparently negotiating about is a customs union. She's negotiating that with Jeremy Corbyn. Now, what happened last week is, as I said, having done this complete capitulation, Theresa May again asked the Europeans for an extension to the 30th of June. The Europeans are very disinclined to grant that, because from their point of view, that would mean that the British would have to participate in the European Parliament elections with no guarantee about what would happen after. And if the British left on the 30th of June, which was far from sure, they might still have to accept the presence of those MPs, most of whom are expected to be very anti-EU MPs in the European Parliament for a longer period. And of course, the European leader who has been speaking most vocally against all of this and has been hinting very strongly that he would probably veto a request for an extension was Emmanuel Macron of France. Now, I think what has happened over the last couple of days is that the European leaders, Macron, Merkel, Tusk, Juncker, Barnier, and of course Varadkar, who is the Prime Minister of Ireland, have all been talking to each other. And I think Macron has gradually accepted that he can't rule out a no-deal situation. He can't insist on a no-deal situation, because if he did that, the Germans, who need the British market at a time when the German economy and the European economy generally are going into crisis, the Germans wouldn't buy it, and that they would be very, very angry with him if he vetoed any extension request. So what it is crystallizing around is that they're going to reject Theresa May's proposal for an extension to the 30th of June. They don't think that's viable. They don't accept that that would work with British MPs elected to the European Parliament and Britain leaving in such a short period. So they're going to grant Britain, or rather they're going to force on Britain and force on Theresa May an extension until the end of the year. The French, however, in return for agreeing to that, are apparently insisting that during this year, when Britain will remain a part of the European Union, it will do so on very truncated terms. So Britain will no longer be able to appoint one of the commissioners, and the British officials in the EU bureaucracy, the senior officials, the political appointments will have to go, and they will have to give all sorts of commitments not to obstruct EU policies on integration and on the single market. And the clear direction all this is moving towards is a situation where Britain remains in the customs union, remains in the single market, but formally leaves the EU's political arrangements. The idea being the Germans keep Britain's market, which is important for their industries, and the French managed to get the British thrown out of all the political institutions where they can no longer obstruct the French drive towards greater integration. It is an EU diktat, which, because of Theresa May's incompetent leadership, the British are being forced to accept.
What an outright
Oh, it's a
victory for the
it's
EU.
a,
An
it's a
outright
total
victory.
it is a total victory. I may add that I'd said until recently that there was if we got the customs union, we would lose the backstop. This is this awful arrangement that Theresa May negotiated, whereby Britain couldn't end what she called a customs arrangement without the agreement of the European Union in order supposedly to protect the soft border with Ireland. Well, it seems hardliners in the EU are now saying that there will have to be a customs, Britain will have to commit to be in the customs union and the single market and accept free movement and will still have to abide by the backstop. So it's if you like, from a British point of view, quite literally the worst of all worlds. It is a total victory for the EU, and it is the British political class, not just Theresa May, who have manoeuvred Britain into this position.
So basically, Macron gets what he wants. He gets the Britain out of any political arrangement. Merkel gets what she wants, in that she has the access to the UK market for German goods. The European Union pretty much still controls the UK's economy and the UK's financial regulations. And the UK has absolutely zero sway and zero pull on pan-European policy.
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to make
this is a
point.
very simple summation, but this is the deal that Theresa May has got it.
It is the correct one. You've summed it up exactly right. I predict that that's what she's going to come back with from Brussels. The other thing I was going to say is that the Conservative Party in the country is furious and is apparently close to meltdown. The Conservative Party in Parliament has once again failed to take action to stop Theresa May. Apparently there have been meetings of Conservative MPs with Theresa May asking her to leave, but she's refused to go. There was a meeting of the 1922 committee. This is this committee of backbench Conservative MPs, and apparently there was no agreement about how they were going to remove her, if they were going to remove her at all. So Theresa May stays. This deal is going to be down Britain's throat. The Conservative Party in the country is in meltdown, but there's nothing they can do. And it is the British political class which has completely betrayed and let down the British people. And I would add, by the way, both of those who voted leave and those who voted remain, because this is entirely a worse position than the one Britain would have been in if there had been no Brexit at all. At least in that case, they would still have had a voice in Brussels. They're not going to even have that now.
Why can't the Conservatives just throw her out?
Well, I don't know is the answer. I mean, it's
legally.
sad.
I mean, legally
Yeah.
is. Why can't they just say the Conservative Party just have a vote if a majority of members in the Conservative Party? I don't know how it works, but can't they just say, you know what, you're not our leader anymore? Just
well, indeed. I mean, right. The procedure is that you pass a vote of confidence, and a vote of confidence can only be held once a year in the leader, and they miss their chance in December. So the rule says that you can't do it again until December of this year. I would say, if I was a Conservative, stuff the rules. If she has no support in the Conservative Parliamentary Party, then they can simply tell her, look, you're not our leader anymore, you must go. And if you don't go, we're just going to elect another leader, support that leader, and if you try and cling on as Prime Minister, vote against you in a vote of confidence. And at that point, I'm sure she would have to go. I mean, that's what I would do. But they've not agreed to do it, and apparently the meeting of the 1922 committee last night hit on a total impasse. People walked out. There was anger. There was recriminations, but there was no agreement on how to proceed. And I think the underlying problem is the problem which has existed all along, which is that they cannot agree on who would take over from Theresa May. The Leavers are now uniting to the extent that they can ever be united around Boris Johnson. He is unacceptable to the Remainers, who want a man called David Lidington, and neither can agree with the other. So the result is that Theresa May stays. That the party of Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher and Benjamin Disraeli should be reduced to these straits is, to me, incredible. But there we are.
You're like kind of speechless at what's happened. Yeah. I was watching the news today, and I saw, they had images of Theresa May in Brussels, and she was, I'll be honest with you, she looked very calm, very happy. She said that, she gave a little interview to, I think it was Euronews that I was watching, and she gave an interview and said, I'm here to negotiate the best deal, for the best orderly deal for the UK to leave the EU, and I'm sure everything's going to go great. And then they had images of her with Angela Merkel, and they're laughing, just a real pleasant, happy atmosphere in Brussels.
Indeed, and these films are
it's incredible.
And all of these films, of course, are being shown in Britain also, and they're being watched by people in Britain, including Conservatives, who are passionately support Leave, and who were promised by Theresa May that Britain would leave on the 29th of March without a customs union. And of course, people are very, very angry when they see that. And they're not just angry now with Theresa May, they're angry with the entire political class in London. And of course, if they're Conservatives, they're very, very angry with their own party, which they feel is letting them down. So, I don't know how long it's going to take, because I said the opposition to the Conservative Party from the pro-Brexit right is still not fully organised. UKIP is still there, but it's become too right-wing for some people, and Nigel Farage no longer leads it. And Nigel Farage's party is still a work in progress. But I predict that at some point, and before very long, the Conservative Party as an institution is going to be in very, very serious trouble. It's going to find that it's going to be losing council seats and losing parliamentary by-elections to parties to the right of it, which are committed to Brexit in a way that it is not, because it has failed to carry it through. As to what has happened to Theresa May, well, you spoke a couple of weeks ago, I think, about how when she leaves being Prime Minister, she'll get a nice job somewhere, probably the United Nations or in one of the NGOs. I'm sure that's where it's going.
She was right at home in Brussels, and it really spoke to me. I think the images, the picture is worth 1,000 words. And those images kind of showed that there's this elite class, this Brussels elitist class, and they don't give an F about what the people voted on. It's obvious. It's clear as day. If you open your eyes and just see what's happening in Brussels and the way these people act when they're together, they really don't care. They're there to make the decisions that benefit them and benefit those above them who control them. And that's really, that's once again, it's very simplistic, terms that I'm laying out, but that's the feeling that you get, and all the turmoil that's happening in the UK right now. It's like these people, they really don't care. They really don't care.
I don't think it's simplistic at all, actually. I think it's pretty accurate. And I think the one great benefit of this whole affair is that it's exposed to the British people, including to me, by the way, the true attitudes of Britain's political class.
She's not there fighting. That's my point.
No, she's not fighting. Of course,
Britain doesn't have anyone there fighting for them.
She fights. The people she fights are her own people. She sides with Angela Merkel against her own people, just as Tsipras sided with Angela Merkel in the end against the Greek people. And that's what consistently happens, not just in Britain and Greece, but, in many places. And with Theresa May, it's now obvious. And as I said, people in Britain are seeing that. They are seeing all the same film that you saw, and they're drawing the same conclusions. Of course they are. And I mean, I should add, by the way, that these negotiations between Corbyn and May are a complete charade, because the decisions now quite clearly are being made in Brussels and are being dictated by the EU. Apparently, it was Angela Merkel who insisted that Theresa May speak to Jeremy Corbyn. And those negotiations, I suspect, are simply a fig leaf to be able to sell this deal more easily to the British people by saying that the Labour Party has agreed to it, which I'm sure it will too, by the way. So, but I mean, let's be quite clear about it. It's not a real negotiation. It is Brussels which is dictating the outcome. It has been doing so ever since the autumn, from the moment when it became absolutely clear that Theresa May had capitulated to the EU on every important point. The Conservative Party in Parliament had the means to stop it. The Conservative cabinet had the means to stop it. On numerous occasions, they came close to saying that they would do so, but it's absolutely clear now that on every occasion they were bluffing, and with their bluff repeatedly called, no wonder Theresa May is looking pleased.
They're all in